Hello, everyone, and welcome to our our tech talk here this morning, this afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. I want to thank everybody for showing up today, and got a lot of really great things to talk about, and just kind of go ahead and get right into it. My name is Gil Gowing. I'm a Pro Audio Solutions Specialist here at Avid. And with me today, I also have Tony Joy and Jeff Komar. And we're going to take you through talking about what's new in our latest Pro Tools release 2021.6, as well as EUCON 2021.6 as well. Before we get started, though, would like to kind of go through some housekeeping first. Just to make sure everybody gets the most out of it. So the first thing, since there's going to be multiples of us presenting at times, and we'll be kind of doing some Q&A at the end, want to make sure everybody has gallery view selected instead of speaker view. So if you can go up to your top right-hand corner, you should see a little icon up there that lets you switch into gallery view. And then also, probably the best thing to do is to hide all non-video participants. So if you look up by your name, there's a little 3-dot icon. You can basically go up there and turn that on. So basically just the 3 presenters will be on your screen in a large format at that point. You won't see a bunch of people that will be helping out with us. So not only do we have myself, Tony, and Jeff here to do the webinar, but we also have some other great members of our team that will be helping us out here on Zoom, as well as the different social media platforms as well. We will be taking questions today, and we'll basically be getting to those towards the end of the webinar. So to be able to ask those, there is a Q&A button in the menu bar, and you can basically just go in there, type a question, and that will get submitted to us, and then we'll go through those at the end and take the questions that we can, and hopefully we'll have some good ones to be able to go over with you. So quick agenda, like I said up front, we want to kind of take you through what's new with our latest release, came out a couple weeks ago, Pro Tools 2021.6, as well as what's new in EUCON 2021.6 for S4, S6, and what's new in EUCON 2021.6 for S1, S3, dock, and Avid control. Talk about these concepts. We'll also be able to kind of show you some live hands-on with some of this as well. So definitely want to make sure that everybody's ready for this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tony, and he's going to take us through the Pro Tools. So go ahead and take it away, Tony.
Let me share my screen real quick. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. So excited to have everyone join us today. And as Gil said, we will be walking through what's new in Pro Tools in the beginning of this section of this webinar. So here at Avid, we are a customer-centric company, and we released the hybrid engine last year. And that was introduced with the Carbon interface that we announced and released late last year. It was a huge hit. Everyone who has a Carbon, it's one of those experiences where you listen to something in sub 1 millisecond latency, there is no going back. So the hybrid engine was a huge hit. And we, being a customer-centric company, we took feedback from our customers, and we know customers wanted to have the same feature sets with the HDX. And with 21.6, we are introducing hybrid engine for the HDX workflow. And this is huge, right? So if you're used to working with a classic HDX workflow, as we call it now, you had a limited number of voices, and you had to add much more cards to get more and more voices depending on your session size. Now, starting with 21.6, hybrid engine for HDX allows you to harness both the CPU power and the DSP power to make the most out of both your extremely powerful computer and the DSP chips that's on board the HTX card. We also have increased the I/O count for both the Pro Tools software and Pro Tools Ultimate. You can have up to 64 channels of I/O at all sample rates. So what this means is if you have a third-party interface, for example, that can do, let's say, 40 microphone inputs, you can use that with Pro Tools, starting with Pro Tools 21.6. As it goes without saying, each HDX card and HNative supports a maximum of 64 channels of I/O. So as I just mentioned, we increase the voice counts with the HDX hybrid engine. So within the HDX hybrid engine workflow, you get up to 2048 voices at all sample rates. Right? This was not the case before due to technical limitations, but thanks to advancements in technology and thanks to hybrid engine, you can have up to 2048 voices at all sample rates. And with a non-HDX system, you still get up to 2048 audio tracks at all sample rates, which is a huge leap from where it was before. On the same token, for Pro Tools software, now you can have up to 256 mono or stereo tracks. So essentially you get double, and keep in mind that across the whole sample rates changes the whole paradigm. You can run a 96 kilohertz session and have the same number of track counts. Native with core audio also gets 2000, I keep saying 20,000, 2048 with Pro Tools Ultimate. Talking about customer feedback, one feedback we got a lot from Avid Customer Association and other channels is the need for delay compensation for native systems. So we have good news for you. Again, with 21.6, you have that functionality. Then we have an abundance of so many small but things that make your workflow much more easier and faster and seamless. One of those features is changing the track channel width. So for example, you might have a mono or a stereo aux track or an audio track. You can actually change the width of that track dynamically without having to delete a track and recreate it, which is huge, right? So if you're working on a 5.1 session, you might have a need to change the width of your track back and forth. Starting with 21.6, you can do that. On a same token, you can actually now move plugins between tracks with different channel widths. So you might have an EQ on a stereo track that you might want to copy and paste onto 5.1 or just move it to a 5.1 track. You can do that starting with 21.6. So I mentioned you can change track width. How easy is it? It is as simple as right-clicking a track and going to the change track width drop-down and changing the track width, right? So that's one way to do it. The next way to do it is actually in the edit window or from the menu. You can go to track, change track width, and then do that from there. If you look closely, both these menus actually have a show hide option at the very bottom. What that allows you to do is essentially choose which all formats you want to work with, right? So once you click on that option, it shows you which all channel widths you want to see at a given time. There might be widths that you never use. For example, I almost never use LCRS, so I choose to hide that. So again, this is one of those small things that make a huge difference to your workflow and brings elegance to your workflow too. You don't want to see a huge list of widths that you might not use much. So this is a screenshot of the playback engine. There's been a few changes in this playback engine window. That's the reason why I want to share this part with you. So the first thing is the hybrid engine option. So yes, if you are an HDX user, you can actually choose to enable or disable the hybrid engine. There might be a specific workflow where you need to work in the classic HDX workflow. Yes, you can do that. Now, under the optimizations tab, we have a couple new things. One is the limit number of real-time threads, which I have deselected in this screenshot. In a normal workflow scenario, you don't need to enable this. If you're running just Pro Tools on your machine, it is advised that you don't toggle this option. However, there are many cases where you might have another software that might be CPU intensive. For example, Sound Miner. So you might have Pro Tools and Sound Miner running on the same machine during a session. And if you notice that Sound Miner is struggling or freezing, it could possibly mean that Pro Tools is taking up all the CPU's cores or engine power, and Sound Miner is not getting enough engine power. In such a specific work in a scenario, you can actually choose to toggle that limit number of real-time threads. And what that does is Pro Tools reserves some part of your CPU's power for other applications. Same with the Intel Turbo Boost. In most cases, yes, you would want to enable it so you get the maximum performance out of your computer system. However, there could be specific workflows where you might have your CPU in the recording booth, or it might be a one room workflow. When you enable the Intel Turbo Boost, it actually increases the fan noise. So there might be workflows where you want to disable it to make sure that your ambient noise is lower. The second screenshot essentially shows the common side chains for delay compensation, which is now available for both native and HTX systems. In addition to all that cool stuff, we also made lots and lots of QuickTime improvements. Starting with 21.6, you can now do same as source bounce to .mov with DNSHD, DNSHR, and Apple ProRes. You can also import and bounce H265 video media in a .mov container. What this means in a realistic, practical way, at least for me, is that I can bring in videos shot on iPhones if I want to do some quick edits or throw in some music to something I shot on my iPhone. One of those easy to do things, right? You can also do AAC export in MOV files now in either constant bitrate or at a variable bitrate. We have also expanded the channel formats that you can do with a .mov audio format. So in addition to all that's been available so far, you get all these formats starting with LCR, LCRS, all the way to third order ambisonics. Going back to customer feedback, this has been one of the most requested features ever since Apple Silicon was announced. And we are very happy to announce that with Pro Tools 21.6, Pro Tools is now qualified for Apple M1 computers over Rosetta. So you can use Pro Tools over Core Audio or with Pro Tools Carbon. Keep in mind, we are actively working to make HTX and HT Thunderbolt to be supported, but it is not ready just yet. Same with video playback engine. We are working hard on it and it will be available soon, but we don't have a timeline just yet. Going back to customer feedback once again. So we introduced Dark Theme many months ago. Our customers, each and every one of you loved it and also gave us lots of feedback. So we went back to the drawing board, took all that feedback and did a handful of changes. So one of the cool things now is you can actually change your UI themes without having to restart Pro Tools. And there is also a good amount of customization that you can do. So let me actually stop my presentation and go to Pro Tools. So now you actually have a UI customization dropdown within the color palette window. As I just mentioned, you can switch between classic and dark themes right from there, right? You can save presets. Depending on your workflow, you can save it within the same machine or export it and import it to a different machine. You also have 5 quick presets, so one click, and you can change between presets. It could be a room where multiple people work, or it could be just workflow-based things where you want a specific UI look when you're recording and a different one when you're mixing and mastering. There's a deep level of customizations that you can do. So you can actually change the text brightness. For general, the background brightness in this general tab. Then for tracks, you have all those options. Same with clips, right? And grids and marker lines, the list goes on and on. The fact is, we want to make sure our customers get what they need to optimize their workflow and to do what they do at best, that is being creative. This is also a a proof that we actually work very hard to make sure there is accessibility for our customers as well. If you need accessibility in Pro Tools, there are instances where people prefer to have much higher contrast and all that. So this is one of the coolest features that I think will make sure that Pro Tools is accessible to everyone. And with that, I will actually hand over to my colleague Jeff Komar, who will walk us through the latest and the greatest in the EUCON world.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to grab the screen share here and we will continue. So we're going to head towards taking a look at Surface, and we're going to start with EUCON specifically for S4, S6, 2021.6, and there's some very significant improvements here. Super excited to show you. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to really focus on, as Tony said, the number one requested feature for our Surfaces for S4, S6 was for users to be able to do custom mapping of knobs and faders, and that's something that we're happy to now show that has been implemented. There's a ton of other stuff in here that I'll mention, but I'm not going to go through a demo with. But in addition to custom fader mapping, we have some new presets that go along with that. I'm sorry, preferences that go along with that allow you to favor, when you click from Pro Tools, a more let's just say a complex map that would be insert parameters versus a dedicated dyno EQ. And I'm actually going to show you an example of kind of why you might do that. We've got a concept of attention presets, basically the ability to quickly change the views that you see in your option modules, like your dedicated knobs, your on attention knobs and faders and things like that. Ability to quickly, with a quick jump, change all of the different display views, whether it's a master meter, a post meter, or just a standard channel meter. Fader start GPO, actually being able to trigger a soft key based on the threshold, when a fader on the desk hits a specific threshold. And then a number of other things, the ability to export a surface configuration with actual data and serial numbers and things like that, and a number of really preferences to optimize your workflow. So we're going to start, and let's talk a little bit about custom mapping. And this is really a big deal because there's plugins that are mapped, in some cases very well. There's others that are mapped not very well at all. But the best map is the map that you create, because it is optimized for the way that you work. And the way that I map may not be the same way that Tony maps. And so the ability to tweak all this is really, really powerful. And I'm going to show you in a short amount of time, I'm going to try to show you both the master module control of knobs, the knob module, or the 32 grid of knobs, either on a dedicated knob module with S6, or in my case, the knob component of a channel strip module in S4. And then also fader module, which we did have some functionality in S4, S6 previously there, but we've really built that out and expanded what you can do with it now, which is awesome. So we're going to start and take a look at knobs, because we've never been able to do this so far. And the concept of basically saying, hey, I've got this particular plugin, in this case it's Empirical Labs Arouser, and I want to change the way that the parameters show up on the docked encoders on the master module. And so literally I can go into just literally touch the custom button here, and it asks me, what do you want to map? And in this case, I'm going to choose, I'm going to touch an encoder on the docked master module and say, hey, I want to map, I want to program those encoders there. Then literally it's just the process of going and touching a parameter in the center section and then correlating that with a physical encoder, and then just iterating, just continuing to do that until you've mapped this exactly the way that you want it. So that is the basic concept for this workflow, and I'm going to take you through it live here in just a second, but I kind of wanted to set it up. The second thing I want to mention is that for something like this particular plugin, this is it's a compressor, but it does a lot more than that. And that is why we may want to have a more complex, as I kind of alluded to, insert parameter mapping for something like this, because it's got harmonic components, it's got filtering, it's got mix, blend, all kinds of other things beyond a traditional compressor. And therefore now we have a preference that allows us to favor the insert parameter map over just the dyno EQ. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. So let's jump over and get into Pro Tools, and we're going to actually take a look. You should be able to see my desk, and I have an S4 for this application, but really everything that we're going to do is absolutely applicable to S6 as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Altiverb. That's the first thing we're going to actually kind of take a look at and customize the map. So I'm going to attention a track that I've got here. It's actually a multi-channel ambience, and we're going to press the home switch to kind of dive in. And I'm going to first kind of push in to get into Altiverb from the center section. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to touch custom. And we're going to basically say, it says, hey, do you want to map the encoders? Do you want to map the faders? Do you want to map the docked encoders? You literally touch whatever you want to map. So I'm going to touch the docked encoders. It asks me if I want to do the master module. In this case, yes, I do. I want to do the master module. So now I'm starting just like I showed you kind of at the beginning. Now, I would always prefer to basically go and start and grab the things that are most important. So in my case, I really care about reverb time. So I'm going to grab reverb time. As you grab a parameter, you can literally start interacting with it, which is great. It's really useful. The next thing that I care about is wet dry, or the mix percentage, right? And I can literally start interacting with that. Maybe input output, I want to grab real quick. So let's go master input, master output, and drop that there. Input output, you've got those. And then maybe we'll also, if you're doing some creative stuff, maybe I want to reverse the impulse, right? So we can press that. And I can just quickly switch, reverse the impulse. On the right side here, let's say I want to be able to damp the low, mid, and high frequencies. So if you can't see the parameter that you want to map, you can literally just swipe over and then touch. And it says, hey, would you like to map the switched behavior? And I'm going to explain this in just a second. Basically, we have the ability to pull off just individual parameters from a modal option with the select switch, or we can just pull the discrete parameter over. And I'm going to show you this in a second here. So what I just brought over is basically low, mid, and high frequency dampening. And I have the ability to defeat that whole section. I've got reverb time, I've got wet dry, I've got all kinds of fun stuff, input, output, and I can reverse my impulse and that kind of thing, okay? If we want to go further and map additional pages, I can certainly easily add a page just by touching the page action add. Now, in this case, I would like to add things like, since it is a multi-channel, I would like to add some contributions for the fronts, the rears, the center, and the LFE. So we're just going to quickly go and grab these and bring these over. And, there is the LFE. And you can see if we just play for a second and I push into, there's the center, bleeding more into the center versus bleeding more into the LFE. And you can see that in the meters. Okay. So I've got control of that. Let's do one more kind of row of important stuff. And we're going to go into, I'm going to swipe over here. Let's say we want to grab the direct gain. And I'm going to say, let's do toggle knob. And I'm going to grab the early reflection gain and the tail gain. Okay, now let's do that one more time. Let's actually touch the direct gain one more time. But this time I can explicitly pull off the direct color. If I want a specific and separate knob for that, I can literally pull that off separately, right? Instead of having to go and press a switched function on direct gain to get into direct color. So that there might be a particular parameter that you really want to have access to, you can now do that. So that's really powerful. So I could just go I can page between what I've programmed. I'm pretty good with this right now. I'm going to hit done. And now I can just basically shift and page to get to my different pages, for example, right? So there's reverb time, or I can page over and grab front, etc. Now I can do, let's say I want reverb time in the dampening, but I also want the components of the multi-channel levels, right? So I can just touch that and I can dock that over here, and I've got those elements there. Okay, so we've quickly made a map that in my case, I prefer, it's more intuitive. And the first thing I'm going to go and grab is the reverb time, right? And so this is what this is all about. It's the power of being able to get the control that you need to creatively harness a plugin. Okay, so let's continue forward and let's work on the 32, the 4x8. To do that, we're literally going to stay in the same view. You can see on the master module function scroller, we're still targeting Altiverb. It's a 5.1, it's a 6-channel version. And I'm going to basically press custom again. It lights everything back up, but this time I'm going to say, I want to actually go and touch the knob module. So I'm going to do that. Now we're focusing on the knob module. Do the same, kind of repeat the same kind of concept, except now I've got obviously a lot more real estate spilled out in 32 encoders. So start where you'd started before. What is the most important stuff to you? In this case, it's going to be reverb time I care about. It's going to be, maybe brightness. I like that. I do like wet dry, and I like to put that over here. Let's go grab input and output, right? Master levels. Let's take a look at some EQ parameters and just kind of quickly just kind of interrogate back to this, the dedicated parameter ideas, right? So let's go and grab some EQ. So how do we do this? Well, basically what we're going to do is we're going to go, let's just put it in the middle. We're going to go grab EQ low gain, grab that. And again, as you map it, you can start interacting with it, which I think is fantastic. So there's the whole EQ section. I can literally start tweaking this. Now I want gain frequency Q. So I'm going to go and touch frequency. It says, do you want me to have a switch behavior, or do you just want the exact parameter? I want the exact parameter. I want as much control because I've got all kinds of knobs. I don't need to switch anything. So do exactly what you just did again, but this time pull Q off explicitly. And now I have dedicated gain frequency Q for my low band. I'll do the same thing one more time. We'll do the high band gain, and we'll pull off specifically high frequency. And do the same thing, basically touch EQ high freq again, but specifically pull Q off, okay? So what do we just do? Well, we've got basically, there's your gains, your frequency for low and high, and your Qs, right? So lots of really powerful control right there. There's my whole EQ section. So I can kind of keep going and I can iterate. Let's say I do want that dampening section. That's really useful. So I'm just gonna go and we'll use the toggle, the switch behavior, which I'll explain here in a second. And we're going to do the switch behavior. What is the switch behavior? Well, for the low and the high, it's actually going to tweak the crossover. So if I press cell, check it out. It's actually now there's the high crossover and then there's the low crossover. That's what that's doing. Otherwise, you've got the low, mid, and high dampening. And we'll bring that up so you can see that a little bit and kind of the behavior thereof. Okay, so that's the concept. Couple last things here. We do care about our levels, right? Our surround levels, very, very useful. Our low frequency bleed. If you made a mistake, like I just did, all you've got to do is just touch and write over what you just what you want to edit, right? If I want to move things around, I can just do that. That's really simple, right? I can basically say, hey, let's add. I want to start with. I'm going to do early reflection gain here and tail gain here, and I can just burn over parameters I've already mapped. It's not a big deal. Very, very simple. Reverse is kind of esoteric. I'm going to put that up here. Okay, so you get the idea. This is very powerful. If it's a more complex type of tool, you can certainly add additional pages. Just hit add, and maybe you got modulation on the second page. So there's modulation speed, modulation depth. We're on page 2, right? Go back to page 1, just page over. And now you have the start of a very intuitive control that is mapped. It's optimized for the way that you want to work. I think that's what this is really all about, okay? So when you're done, hit done. And now to access that, we literally just kind of go and you're looking at the chain view. So I'm going to push into Altiverb, and it's going to basically expand that exact view. So there's your reverb time, and there's brightness, and there's my wet dry, and I can bypass the whole thing, and I've got bass and treble, and everything that I created that I want instantly, I have access to. That's really powerful. So the last thing that we're going to look at was expand is fader mapping. And I've actually already started down the road, but I thought we could do a little bit of editing on what I've already done. So if I hold down the expand button while we're looking at the map, the expanded view of knobs, it's going to jump me into expand faders. This is really taking what we already had with fader mapping on S4, S6 and taking it way further. And what we have the ability to do now is direct interaction with parameters. So let's just say I'm gonna tweak this a little bit, right? I'm gonna make some changes. So let's go back in and do some more editing. I'm gonna go custom. This time I'm gonna touch the faders. And it's going to bring back the last state of the map if you had a map. Otherwise, it'll be blank. But I've actually started an idea. I've started working. So I'm going to make some tweaks here. So I like Reverb Time. Maybe I'll keep that, but I'd like to actually make some changes here. Maybe I want input, output, and then wet, dry. So I'm just going to go add some elements here. So same concept as we've been working the whole time. So I'm going to go input, and I'm going to go output. Okay. And the beautiful thing is I can start interacting with the stuff that's here, right? Maybe I want brightness second. So I'm actually going to go and I'm going to touch, and actually, you know what? I just got out of my map. So let's go back in there. That happens. Back into custom and touch the fader. And you need to actually go into the right plugin. Back into there, back into the fader. Okay, so we're back to where we were. And I wanted to actually touch brightness and dump that on top of pre-delay because I didn't want that anymore. And let's just do EQ bass and EQ treble and direct gain. And I can actually do this in one row. So I'm going to touch the second brightness. And now I've added bass, treble, and direct gain. Okay, so I added a couple things in line. Now I've got multiple pages. The beautiful thing here is that I have unlimited pages, right? So as I roll through this, I come up with a construct where in my case, I've got the mix percentage on the far fader, and I've actually put that on every page. So whether I'm doing EQing or I'm doing reverb time or I'm doing the front, rear, center, and LFE components, I still have my wet dry, which I think is really, really handy. And so you've got a dedicated bypass also right here, which is really nice. So every page has the OK button is actually functions as a bypass. So very, very powerful. Once you've made the tweaks or you've defined your map, you just literally hit done again and you're back. So now when I attention this element, I can go and control it from the master section. I can go into the expanded knob view. I can hold down expand and I can get into my fader map. And it's that simple to be able to just jump in and control any elements from any plugin, right, that I need to from the surface. Okay.
So Jeff, a question came in and just want to make sure that we touch on this and make it clear. So can you store a map for a plugin like Altiverb that is always the map every time you instantiate the plugin in every session, or is it only saved in the current session?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So two things. And let's actually look at, I'm going to go to the global settings and show you this. So there's a setting under the globals that basically says auto load custom knob and fader maps from sessions. So right now, if that is ticked and you've associated the blue star with Pro Tools, then it will automatically bring back your maps that you've defined in your session. Now, that can be stored into a template. You can do a save as template and have a starting place for your work. You can also open up a legacy session and basically take the clear custom knob maps off, and you can basically bring in the current state of all these maps I've just created, bring them into a legacy session that you worked on a long time ago, and then save that, and that gets saved back to the Pro Tools session as well. So new sessions, old sessions, templates, yes, as long as you've ticked those boxes. And the other really cool thing is this is a 5.1 Altiverb. If I'm using a mono Altiverb, a stereo Altiverb, a 5.1 Altiverb, it still works. You make the map once and it works for everything. Okay.
Awesome.
Let's hand it off to Gil.
All right. So Jeff just kind of took us through what was new with S4 and S6 in this latest release. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and let's now take a look at what is new with the EUCON surfaces. So just like Jeff showed with the S4, S6, we also have custom knob mapping for our smaller format surfaces, and really cool what we can do there. We have the knob mapping. We don't have the fader mapping on the smaller surfaces, but but lots we can do with the knob mapping and how that all works. There's also a meter strip designer, which I'm going to show live here in a minute, that works with the Avid Control meter on the meter apps on the S1, or with the Avid Control desktop app. If you're using that with S1 or S3, you can basically customize how your meter strip looks. There's also, just like the other, the bigger release for the workstations, we've got some smaller things like being able to lock a spilled master to the dock, being able to, when you're on different pages on Avid Control on the dock, you can touch the monitor knob or you move the monitor knob, and it'll basically, you'll get a pop-up of the of what the level is at that point, so you can kind of see that without having to jump back over to the monitor page. Auto match indicators on the Avid Control app, that's a nice little addition, so you know which direction to go when you're writing automation to match back out. Being able to do custom speaker names and sources and speaker logic control, all from the actual Avid Control app. Some new soft key settings, and then some other different kind of little extras, being able to scroll into view with multi-select, and then also have the ability, little things like being able, when you hit your flip button, it basically is going to flash and let you know that you are in flip mode. So just some really nice little things there. So want to kind of take you through, show you how the knob mapping works here on these on the smaller surfaces first. So let me change my screen share out here real quick, and you guys should be able to see now my S1s and my Avid Control app on my dock. So real easy how this works. All of it's done over here on the Avid Control app for doing the knob mapping. First thing we'll do is we'll select inserts over here. And just like Jeff, the browser is one of my more favorite plugins. So we're going to dive into here. And sort of like you saw over on the S4 master module, there is a custom button up here in this cluster of buttons right below all the process switches. And when we tap that, it basically takes us into now a custom mapping page. So this is a little bit different. Instead of selecting something and tapping a knob, this is very drag and drop oriented. So we can choose to do a 1x8, which is what we have over here on our surfaces, or we can actually now customize and do a separate map for 4x2, which is what we have up here, the encoder setup on the dock with the Avid Control app. Now, the first one I want to do is a 1x8, so we're going to go ahead and select that. Now, from here, it's very simple. All you do is you come find something you want, like, let's say on this input is the threshold, so I'm going to just grab, drag, and drop. So I can do the same thing here with ratio, attack, release, come over here and do my trim, saturation control, maybe do a cutoff, and put my output up here at the top. Now, as you, real quickly, let me come over here and let's get into our actual inserts. And so we can see that. As I was building it, basically we had a blank canvas, and as I was dragging those in, it actually builds out, and you can see exactly what's going on as you're building this. Now, I've got 16 faders here, or 16 channels, and I want to go ahead and keep going and make another page of 8. So that's very simple. Just hit the plus button, creates a second page for us, and now I can come over here and basically start working and dragging some more things around here to make the map how I want to. And once again, that just shows up right there on the surface, just like Jeff showed before. Even while we're still in this custom mode, I have control and be able to actually interact with the plugin all right there immediately as we're going. Now, building the 1x8, if we go out of custom mode now, building that 1x8 basically places it both on the surface and on the Avid control dock combination. But I want a totally different map over here for the dock app. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into custom mode now, select 4x2, and you'll see that this now is staying the way I had it on the 1x8. And now I can go and create an entirely different map. So let's say I want to put input, ratio, attack, and release on the right side this time. And then maybe this time I want to do my mix control, opto control, put output up here at the top, and maybe saturation right there. Now I've got my mix control here, and I'd actually like to have my dry trim right above it. So I actually made a mistake. So I can either hit the clear button and manually clear that out, or I can just drag another parameter on top of what's there, just kind of like Jeff showed just a second ago, and we can make some changes. Just like Jeff showed as well, if we want certain things to basically be on multi-pages, we can. So with this, I want to take my mix and put it here. I want to put my dry trim above that. But now we're going to take cutoff up here, opto. We'll get frequency, alt mod, boosted cut, and second harmonic. So now I can basically switch, get to all those, get out of my back into my inserts view, and I have a totally different map now over here on the iPad dock than I do up here on my actual Surface. So this is actually kind of a first. Always before, it was the exact same map in both places, and now we can create these custom maps. Just like Jeff showed before, as we go out, that basically saves that map to your drive, and basically now every time you call this plugin up with the EUCON stuff, that it basically will bring that plugin map back. Another really cool thing is even though we do have some nice layouts for EQ and dynamics, if you don't like the way those things kind of lay out on the Surface as well, you can actually go and create custom maps for both dynamics and EQ. So that's another nice plus here, is being able to actually change up how those things look. And that's a very, very cool thing. So that's pretty much it here for our, creating these custom maps for the smaller surfaces. Now let's jump into looking at how we can create kind of a custom meter view for these iPads or tablets that are on the S1, or if I was using the Avid Control desktop app, it would change it there. So to go into the meter strip designer, we're going to tap the little gear icon on the right top of the Avid Control app, our master Avid Control app on the dock. There is over here in the settings column, you can see meter strip designer. That takes us now to the actual designer page where we can start making changes. Now, if all you want to do is maybe kind of change the order of things that are there, the strip preview is showing you is what the layout is right now. So I might want to put my track name all the way down to the bottom. I actually might want to move my automation up right below the actual meter. To get that to now show up on my surfaces, all I got to do is hit save, and that basically will then make that change, and those changes are now done on my meter pages. If I want to get back to a starting point, just hit default and save, and that basically takes me back there. But if I actually want to go and actually create a total customized view with certain elements shown, certain elements not shown, very easy to do that as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to drag out all of the elements that are there over into this available items column to basically give us a starting point. Now, the one item that you can't drag out, because it's the one piece about a meter that you need to always have there, which is the actual meter itself. Now, if you look over in the available items column, you'll see that got all the elements, and then there's a multi-graph that would normally be switched between pan view, a dynamics view, and an EQ view. When you pull it over here, it basically breaks itself out into those three elements plus its own multi-graph. So how this works now is I can grab the multi-graph and put it back over here into the strip preview column. And now I can choose what I actually want to go into that multi-graph. So for my particular view, what I like is to have the dynamics and the EQ be part of the multi-view, but I actually want the pan to sit below that as its own view. Other thing I want to see is automation, and I want to see track name. Other things for right now, really not that concerned about. So I've got my meter laid out the way I want to. I hit save, would go out, and now you'll see that I've got my custom meter on those tablets above my S1, and it also will show that on the meter page over here on my master iPad that's on my dock. So once again, if I want to get back to kind of the default view, I just hit default, save, and it basically takes me right back to where we started from. Very easy to go in, quickly change these things around as you need to, but it's really great to be able to kind of create a custom meter view for how you want to work with your workflow while you're doing your mixing on these smaller surfaces. We could always change the different views. They are preset, but there's several different views on the S4, S6 on the display modules. This basically is kind of giving us a little bit of that here on our smaller surfaces as well. So some really, really great features here that we've got going on. Like I said before, we really listen to the custom feedback, and some of these things were very much at the top of the list of what people were looking to be able to get to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop my share. We've got about 10, 12 minutes left. Let's is there any questions that might have come up, or maybe anything else, Tony or Jeff, that you might want to kind of expand upon that we've talked about already?
One thing I'll mention that I was going to mention that is also very cool is the knob maps that I created of the same size can actually be brought over from S4 or S6 over to my rig that I've got that I use with my dock and Avid control. So that XML file that you actually create on S4, S6 for the custom maps you don't have to recreate those maps. So those Altiverbs that I created, for example, the 4x2 on the master module, I can absolutely use that on the 4x2 on my Avid control and dock on my second rig. So that's really handy.
I know that this question's come up several times. Kind of asking kind of about general M1 readiness. I want to go back to that a little bit. So Jeff, I know you have an M1 computer that you've kind of done a little bit of testing with. I know I have one as well. Maybe give a little bit, kind of expand upon what your experience has been, using these versions of Pro Tools with that.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been using the M1 here with some Dante stuff with Big Sur. It's been pretty good. Obviously we're still waiting for HD native HDX compatibility, but we do have Carbon support. I've used anything from Dante Via to also I've hooked it up directly to my home theater and done some surround mixing with the M1 directly hooked up to my home theater via HDMI, and it worked quite well, and it's got a lot of performance, and so we're definitely optimistic about adding in all of the additional as Gil said, hardware driver support, but so far it's been really compelling.
Yeah, and one thing to mention here is, we are running a pretty complex DAW under an emulation layer with Rosetta, and it actually works even in that state pretty well, and it's pretty stable. So obviously looking forward to moving forward and getting those drivers for HD native HDX done, as along with the video engine, as well as, actually getting the app and all of our plugins to be running natively on that Apple Silicon. So that's definitely something we're working towards, and definitely know that we are working very, very hard on that. This question came in, and I thought you might have just answered this, but we'll go ahead and bring it up now again. Can setups be shared between different systems and studios? And I'm assuming that they're talking about the different custom knob mappings. So yeah, that actually can. So it's a manual process at this point. I don't actually have the path right in front of me, but it is in the What's New guide for EUCON, for both UControl and for workstation control. Those things can you can definitely take what you've done on the smaller system, like I was showing. Take those files and you can bring them over and you put them on the master module of the S4, S6, vice versa. You can put them on a stick and take them with you to other studios. So absolutely, those can be moved around to different systems. It is a manual kind of process at this point, but it definitely can be done. Let's see, what else?
I just want to emphasize the custom fader maps.
Do what?
I was saying I want to emphasize a bit on the custom fader maps that Jeff mentioned earlier. If users, this is mostly for S4 and S6 users, but if you are an S6 or S4 user and you haven't tried the custom fader map yet, especially with this newer release, I think it is something you should try. It can be so easy to do that, especially with things like Atmos height on a fader is so easy because you can close your eyes and know, okay, if I go all the way up, it's at the top. If I pull it all the way down, it's at the bottom. So just wanted to point that out.
No,
yeah,
that's definitely. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to reiterate. My personal perspective, since we had some concept of fader mapping on S4 and S6 previously, but we did have some limitations, including just the ability to have just 2 pages and just whatever was on the knob is basically brought down. So for example, when I pulled off the direct color, or we had the actual cue for the lower high band with Altiverb, that's not always ideal because the manufacturer chose to hide a parameter underneath the select switch on a knob, and that's not always great. So now you literally can pull any parameter off of any layer of those peers, put it on a fader or faders in multiple places, multiple pages, switched or not switched, unlimited pages. And the other thing that I think is really far more intuitive is as you're building the map, you can interact with it. That was always something that was really kind of frustrating in a complex map, whether it's a cargo cult plugin or something that you're trying to really dial it in. You actually couldn't interact with the faders until you finished it and you realized, oh, I don't want that there. So then you go back into edit and you tweak and you tweak and you tweak. Now you can literally drop and start, okay, yeah, I think it would be better over here. Move it, tweak, hit save. And so there's so much, it is a more interactive and fun and creative and efficient way now with this current iteration of fader mapping.
And one thing I just kind of popped into my head here, it kind of go back to talking about the smaller surfaces. While we don't have custom fader mapping available here on the smaller surfaces, you can do a lot of what Jeff just said by when you're pulling up the parameters on the encoders, just hit the flip button. And while you're building, then it's almost like building a custom fader map at that point on the smaller surfaces. You've got those parameters flipped down. You can start building and you can start interacting with that plugin and really get a feel kind of for how that's going to work under your fingers. And that, I think, is definitely, that's one of the more creative things. I mean, that's something that we've always kind of strived with when we started way back when we came out with Decontrol Icon back, 15 years ago now, is, with the whole custom faders over there. And we've really now taken it to a whole other level with this release now on the EUCON surfaces. So definitely a very, very big deal.
The last thing I want to reiterate real quick, because you showed a rouser and I talked about a rouser. So it's worth mentioning that preference that I made reference to, because it's actually quite important, which is basically called, it is that you want to favor show EQ and Dyne plugins as inserts if there's an insert custom map. And so what that means is, if Gil clicks from Pro Tools in his, from his mouse, he can tell it that he wants his custom, blue, teal map of a rouser, as opposed to the green, which is going to be the dedicated kind of just threshold, ratio, attack, release. His has got all the goodness of saturation and cutoff and all of that. So that's what that preference does, and it's very beneficial because it can then bring that up on his S1s.
And to kind of go beyond that, it basically allows you to not have to do a custom map for the dynamics. You can leave that status the way it comes, and then pull up plugins that way. And instead of it bringing it up the Dyne, it actually now brings up your teal custom map, just like Jeff said, and it has all that extra goodness in there that you can get to mapped exactly where you had it. So. One last question here, and I'll answer this real quick. The question is, the assignable knob in Pro Tools still a maybe not happening situation? It's definitely something that's on our list, and we are working on that. Just don't have a timetable, but it's definitely still something that we're looking into doing for Pro Tools. And then since then, we had one more question come in. Let me see what this is. All right, so the question is, since Pro Tools Ultimate 2021.6 has 2,048 voices, we do get calls from post-mixing customers who have purchased HDX cards to get many voices of processing power years ago. They keep asking if they still need their HDX cards, as they do not record any input signal, just stems internally. I'd like to make sure they make no mistake in selling off their HDX cards and still benefit to HDX cards now. First off, I will say that one thing that we have seen, and our customers, our beta testers have actually seen during the testing phase of HDX Hybrid Engine, was that even though you weren't using any of the DSP at all, everything was done on the host in the Hybrid Engine, and you could basically take the same session, same computer, switch the engine to another native type host. There was an unquantified increase in host power from when you were using the HDX Hybrid Engine over any other host-based engine with the same, apples to apples session and computer. Now, do they necessarily need all the HDX cards? That's pretty much for your client to decide. I mean, the big thing here, even if they're not recording, but especially for if you're doing Atmos mixing and you're going to be working off to an external renderer, you still need at least 2 HDX cards to be able to get the IO count that you need. That basically you're still capped at 64 per card. And to get all 128 channels for an Atmos mixing session to an outside renderer, you do need 2 cards for that. And there might be times we showed, and we talked about this in some of the different demos that we've done for Hybrid Engine, that even though you might not be recording and need the DSP for that low latency monitoring path, I mean, you might not have the fastest computer in the world. You might only have like a 12 or a 16 core Mac Pro, or even like in some of our cases, some of the i7 6-core Mac Minis. And you need to get to a point and trying to mix a big Atmos session, you might need to use those cards to offload some of like your submix processing and other things off of those cards at that point. there's definitely still a benefit to having those cards around. So if they've got HDX, hybrid engine is definitely the way to go in the future, even if you're not recording. So personally, I would assume that Jeff and Tony and all the rest of the Avid would agree that they still definitely serve a purpose, and I would recommend absolutely keeping them in the systems. So with that, we are a little past our hour mark, so I'm going to go ahead and call it here. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in, so I want to thank everybody for being here with us, whether it be super late at night, early morning in some parts of the world, or mid-afternoon. Definitely thank you guys for taking some time, and spending this time with us and letting us kind of go over kind of what's new with our offerings for both Pro Tools and EUCON. So on behalf of myself, Jeff, Tony, and all of us here at Avid helping here today, thank you very much, and we'll see you again real soon. Thanks.